If you ever want to know how quickly a kingdom can create its own enemy, watch what happens when it humiliates the wrong woman. The full moon hung above Iron Hollow like a silver coin pressed into a black sky, bathing the stone square in cold light as hundreds of wolves gathered for the judgment assembly. Every seat around the ancient circle was filled. Alphas stood proudly beside their families. Betas whispered predictions to one another. Even children sat quietly on the outer steps, sensing that something unusual was about to happen. At the center of it all stood Ara Whitmore. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides, though she fought to hide it. She had spent 24 years learning how to endure the stares, learning how to survive the whispers, learning how to remain standing when people looked at her as though she were a mistake the moon goddess had forgotten to erase. Tonight felt no different. At least, that was what she told herself. The banners of Thornridge Pact shifted gently in the night breeze. Their silver wolf emblem glimmered beneath the moonlight. Above the assembly platform sat Alpha King Kalin Thornridge, his expression unreadable as he observed the crowd. He was respected throughout the Northern Territories. Powerful, disciplined, the kind of leader whose presence alone could silence an entire room. Yet tonight, even his calm appearance seemed edged with frustration. Elder Vance stepped forward and raised a ceremonial staff. The murmurs died instantly. Ara Whitmore, he announced, you stand before the pack accused of dishonoring the sacred traditions of the moon trials. A ripple of disapproval spread through the crowd. Ara lifted her chin. Her pale eyes remained steady despite the pressure closing around her from every direction. I broke no tradition, she answered quietly. Several wolves scoffed. Others rolled their eyes. They had already decided what they believed long before she arrived. The accusation itself mattered less than the opportunity to blame someone who had never truly belonged. Kalin finally rose from his seat. The movement alone drew every eye toward him. The moon trials are not a game, he said. His voice carried effortlessly across the square. Every wolf in this territory follows the same laws. Ara met his gaze. For a brief moment, neither looked away. She remembered admiring him once. Remembered believing fairness lived somewhere beneath the crown. Tonight she was no longer certain. Then why am I the only one standing here? She asked. The question landed heavily. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Others frowned. Kalin's jaw tightened. Because your actions brought attention to yourself. Laughter broke out among several younger wolves. Ara felt heat rise to her cheeks but refused to lower her eyes. That only seemed to irritate the crowd more. They wanted embarrassment. They wanted weakness. They wanted proof that she deserved her place beneath them. Instead, she remained standing. The moonlight illuminated her silver blonde hair as the wind moved through it. Elder Vance attempted to restore order, but the crowd's energy continued building. One voice became 3. 3 became 20. Soon criticism echoed from every direction. Ara could no longer distinguish individual words. The noise merged into a single wave of judgment. Through it all, Kalin watched silently. Then, in a moment that would later be repeated across kingdoms and generations, he stepped forward and publicly dismissed her before the entire pack. The square erupted. Some wolves nodded in approval. Others looked relieved. A few seemed almost excited. Ara felt something inside her crack. Not from anger, not from humiliation, but from understanding. For the first time, she realized nobody was coming to defend her. Nobody was going to stand beside her. Nobody was going to tell the crowd they were wrong. The realization should have broken her. Instead, an unfamiliar calm settled over her heart. The wind suddenly changed direction. The torches surrounding the square flickered. Several wolves glanced upward. Somewhere beyond the mountains, far beyond the territory marked on any map, a distant howl rolled across the night. It was deep, ancient, powerful enough to make conversations stop mid-sentence. Ara heard it clearly. More strangely, she felt it, not with her ears, with her soul. And for the briefest moment, beneath the full moon, she could have sworn something enormous had just opened its eyes. For several long seconds, nobody moved. The distant howl had vanished as suddenly as it appeared, leaving only silence hanging over the stone square. Then the crowd began whispering again. Some dismissed it as thunder rolling through the mountains. Others laughed nervously and pretended nothing unusual had happened. But Ara could not ignore what she had felt. The sound lingered inside her chest like an echo trapped beneath her heartbeat. Elder Vance cleared his throat and formally ended the assembly. One by one, wolves began leaving the square. Families gathered their children. Merchants folded their stalls. Torches flickered as the night deepened. Yet wherever Alara looked, she caught people staring. Some with pity, most with satisfaction. She turned away before their expressions could settle deeper into her memory. The stone streets of Iron Hollow stretched before her as she walked alone beneath the moonlight. The familiar buildings suddenly felt foreign. Every corner carried memories she no longer wanted. Every window reminded her that she had spent years trying to earn acceptance from people who had already made their decision. A cold wind swept through the village. Alara wrapped her cloak tighter around her shoulders and continued toward the small cottage she rented near the northern edge of town. The walk normally took 10 minutes. Tonight it felt much longer. Halfway there, she heard footsteps behind her. She did not need to look to recognize them. Kalin Thornridge stopped several feet away. Neither spoke immediately. The village around them remained quiet except for the distant rustling of trees. Alara stared ahead. "You should not have followed me," she finally said. Kalin exhaled slowly. "I did not come here to argue." She almost laughed. That would be a first. His expression tightened. For a moment, he looked less like a king and more like a man carrying a burden he could not explain. The pack needed stability. "No," Alara replied softly. The pack needed someone to blame. The words landed harder than either expected. Kalin said nothing. Alara continued walking. This time he did not stop her. When she finally reached her cottage, she locked the door behind her and leaned against it. The silence felt overwhelming. The small room contained little more than a bed, a fireplace, and a wooden table scarred by years of use. Yet it had always felt safe. Tonight, even that comfort seemed distant. She sat beside the window and watched the moonlight spill across the floorboards. Sleep never came. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Somewhere after midnight, the strange feeling returned. It began as warmth beneath her ribs. Not painful, not frightening, simply unfamiliar. Alara pressed a hand against her chest. The sensation grew stronger. Then she heard it. A voice. Faint at first. So faint she thought she imagined it. "Alara." Her breath caught. The room was empty. The door remained locked. Yet the voice had spoken clearly. She rose from her chair and looked around the cottage. Nothing moved. Shadows remained still. The wind outside rattled the branches against the roof. "Alara." The voice came again. Deeper this time. Older. It seemed to arrive from everywhere at once. The walls. The floor. The moonlight itself. Fear should have taken hold. Instead, curiosity pushed her forward. She stepped outside into the cold night air. The village slept peacefully around her. Above, the full moon illuminated the valley with silver light. Then she saw it. Far beyond the town, near the dark line of mountains on the horizon, a single pale glow flickered briefly between the peaks. One flash, then another, as though something hidden deep within the wilderness was calling to her. The warmth inside her chest intensified. The voice returned for a third time. "Find me." Alara stood frozen beneath the stars. The mountains were nearly 40 miles away. No sane person would travel there alone. Yet the moment the voice faded, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever had awakened tonight was real. And somehow, impossibly, it knew her name. Alara left before sunrise. She packed only what she could carry in a weathered canvas satchel and stepped onto the northern road while Iron Hollow still slept beneath a blanket of gray dawn mist. The voice had not returned during the final hours of darkness, yet the strange warmth remained inside her chest, steady and undeniable, like a compass pointing towards something waiting beyond the mountains. Every instinct told her the journey was reckless. The northern wilderness stretched for dozens of miles beyond the borders of known territory. Ancient forests covered the valleys. Forgotten ruins hid beneath tangled roots and stone. Travelers rarely ventured there unless necessity forced them. Even then, most stayed close to marked trails. Alara found herself leaving those trails behind before noon. The deeper she traveled, the quieter the world became. Birdsong faded. The wind seemed to whisper through the trees instead of blowing. By late afternoon, she reached the edge of Black Hollow Forest, a place surrounded by old stories and warnings. As a child, she had heard countless tales about the forest. Some claimed ancient spirits lived beneath its roots. Others believed forgotten kings had once hidden treasures there. Most dismissed those stories as superstition. Standing beneath the towering pines now, Alara was no longer certain. The voice still had not spoken again, yet she somehow knew she was heading in the right direction. The warmth inside her chest grew stronger with every mile. As evening approached, she entered a narrow valley carved between two ridges. Massive stone formations rose from the earth like the ribs of some sleeping giant. Moss covered their surfaces. Vines hung from cracks weathered by centuries of rain and snow. Then she saw it. Half buried beneath roots and earth stood a circular archway carved from pale stone. Alara stopped immediately. Her pulse quickened. The structure did not appear natural. Symbols covered its surface. Strange patterns twisted across the stone in spirals and crescents. Despite years of erosion, they remained visible. Something about them felt familiar. She stepped closer. Her fingers brushed the cold surface. The moment she touched the stone, a memory surfaced. Not a true memory, more like a feeling. Moonlight shining across silver banners. Voices speaking a language she did not know. A crown resting upon dark velvet. The sensation vanished almost instantly, leaving her breathless. Alara pulled her hand back. Above the archway, one symbol stood larger than all the others. A crescent moon wrapped around the silhouette of a wolf. Her stomach tightened. She had seen that image before. Not here. Not in any book. The mark existed on her own skin, hidden beneath her left shoulder since birth. A birthmark doctors and healers had always dismissed as unusual but meaningless. Slowly, Alara reached beneath her cloak and touched the spot through the fabric. The shape matched perfectly. A cold chill traveled down her spine. "Impossible," she whispered. The forest remained silent. Then the voice returned, clearer than ever before. "You have finally arrived." Alara spun around. Nobody stood behind her. Yet the words echoed through the valley. Ancient, calm, patient. The archway began to glow faintly beneath her fingertips. Silver light flowed through the carved symbols like water finding forgotten rivers. The ground trembled softly beneath her boots. Not enough to frighten her, just enough to remind her that something old was waking. Far above, clouds drifted away from the moon. Pale light poured into the valley. The symbols brightened. The warmth in her chest surged. And for the first time in her life, Alara realized the mystery surrounding her birth might not be a curse at all. It might be the beginning of a truth someone had spent generations trying to hide. The silver light pouring through the ancient archway continued to brighten until the entire valley seemed suspended between night and dawn. Alara stood motionless, her pulse racing as glowing patterns spread across the stone beneath her feet. The symbols no longer looked random. They formed pathways, circles, and names written in a language she had never learned and somehow almost understood. The voice returned, deeper now, carrying the weight of centuries. Blood remembers what kingdoms forget. The words echoed through the valley and through her mind. Before Alara could respond, the archway released a gentle wave of light that swept across the clearing. The air grew warm. The towering trees surrounding the valley shivered softly as though recognizing an old friend. Then the earth beyond the archway began to shift. Roots slowly separated. Stone slid aside. A hidden staircase emerged from beneath the hillside, descending into darkness. Alara stared at it. Every sensible thought urged her to turn back. Yet something stronger pulled her forward. She stepped through the archway and began descending. The staircase seemed endless. Moonlight followed her down, illuminating smooth stone walls carved with countless images. Wolves standing beside crowned rulers. Silver banners flowing above enormous cities. Great halls built beneath glowing moons. None of it resembled the history she had been taught. According to every lesson she remembered, the Alpha Kingdoms had ruled the northern territories for centuries. Yet these carvings told a different story, a much older one. Nearly 10 minutes later, the stairs opened into a vast underground chamber. Alara stopped breathing for a moment. The room stretched hundreds of feet in every direction. Crystal formations covered the ceiling, reflecting pale silver light across the cavern. At the center stood a circular platform surrounded by 12 stone pillars. Each pillar displayed the same crescent wolf symbol she carried on her shoulder. The warmth inside her chest intensified. Her feet moved before she consciously decided to walk. One step, then another. As she approached the platform, the crystals overhead began glowing brighter. The chamber awakened around her. Ancient mechanisms hidden within the walls hummed softly. Silver light flowed from pillar to pillar like streams connecting distant rivers. Then she saw it. Resting upon the center platform was an enormous wolf carved entirely from luminous stone. It stood nearly 12 feet tall. Its posture radiated quiet strength. Its eyes remained closed. Yet even motionless, it felt alive. Alara's throat tightened. She knew instinctively that this was the source of the voice. The final few feet felt strangely difficult. Not because anything blocked her path, because standing near the wolf filled her with awe. The same feeling one might experience standing before an ocean during a storm or gazing at mountains that touched the clouds. "Who are you?" she whispered. Silence lingered for several seconds. Then the wolf answered, "I am what remains." The crystal eyes slowly opened. Silver light flooded the chamber. Alara staggered backward in shock. Yet she felt no danger, only recognition. The wolf studied her with ancient patience. "For 1,000 years I have waited." Alara struggled to find words. Waited for what? The wolf lowered its massive head. "For the last heir." The chamber fell silent again. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it. Heir. The word felt impossible. Ridiculous. Yet every instinct told her the creature spoke the truth. Images suddenly flashed through her mind. Cities beneath moonlit skies. Crowns forged from silver crystal. Thousands of wolves gathering before a throne older than any kingdom alive today. Then she saw a woman standing beneath a full moon. Her silver eyes matched Alara's perfectly. The vision vanished as quickly as it appeared. Tears filled Alara's eyes before she understood why. The wolf's voice softened. "Your family protected the secret until history forgot their names. But the throne remembers. The blood remembers. And now, Ara Whitmore, the moon wolf, has awakened." The chamber felt much smaller once the excitement faded. A few hours earlier, Alara had stood beneath glowing crystals believing answers would finally bring certainty. Instead, they brought responsibility. Only 12 people remained inside the ancient sanctuary by sunset. 12. Not hundreds. Not thousands. Just 12 strangers gathered around small lanterns while cold mountain air drifted through forgotten hallways. The moon wolf watched silently from its stone platform. Its eyes remained open now, filled with ancient wisdom, yet it offered no solutions. Alara was beginning to understand why. Some journeys could not be guided. They had to be earned. A gray-haired woman named Miriam sat beside a fire built from fallen branches gathered near the valley entrance. Across from her sat a former hunter called Owen. Nearby, a young mother wrapped her sleeping daughter inside a wool blanket. They had all heard the call. They had all traveled north. Yet hearing a call and believing in a future were not the same thing. Alara could feel their uncertainty every time they looked at her. They wanted hope. They also wanted proof. The problem was that Alara still doubted herself. Outside, dark clouds gathered above the mountains. The first signs of winter had arrived early. Winds swept through the valley, carrying a sharp chill that promised difficult weeks ahead. Owen returned shortly before nightfall, carrying a small sack. He dropped it beside the fire. The contents immediately drew concerned looks from everyone present. A handful of roots. A few berries. Little else. "That is all?" Miriam asked quietly. Owen nodded grimly. "Game is scarce." Silence followed. Alara stared into the fire. She understood exactly what everyone else was thinking. Food. Shelter. Supplies. The ancient kingdom possessed beautiful stories, hidden chambers, and glowing crystals. None of those things could feed people through a mountain winter. One of the younger travelers finally stood. His name was Garrett. He had arrived only that morning. Maybe this was a mistake. Nobody responded. Garrett rubbed his hands together against the cold. "I followed a voice into the wilderness and found ruins." He looked directly at Alara. "No offense." Alara nodded. "None taken." Garrett hesitated before continuing. "People are talking about kingdoms and destinies. But winter is coming. We need real answers." His words stung because they were true. Several others exchanged nervous glances. The hope that had filled the chamber earlier seemed thinner now. More fragile. Alara stood slowly. Every eye turned toward her. She wished she possessed inspiring words. She wished she knew exactly what to say. Instead, she chose honesty. "I do not have all the answers." A few faces fell immediately. She continued before doubt could spread further. "I cannot promise comfort. I cannot promise certainty. What I can promise is that I will not ask anyone to face this alone." The chamber remained quiet. Miriam studied her carefully. Owen looked away toward the fire. Nobody applauded. Nobody cheered. Yet nobody left either. The moment felt strangely important. Not because Alara had inspired them. Because she had told the truth. Later that night, long after everyone had settled into temporary sleeping areas, Alara climbed the staircase and emerged beneath the stars. The valley stretched silently before her. Frost coated the grass. Winter was closer than she had feared. Footsteps echoed behind her. The moon wolf's voice reached her mind without speaking aloud. Leadership begins when certainty ends. Alara stared across the dark landscape. They need someone stronger. No, the ancient guardian replied. They need someone who stays. Tears threatened to form, but she blinked them away. For years she had searched for a place where she belonged. Now 12 strangers had placed their fragile hopes beside hers. The burden terrified her. Yet beneath that fear, something else had begun to grow. Determination. As she looked toward the horizon, distant lights suddenly appeared among the trees far below. One light, then another, then 3 more. Travelers. More people answering the call. Or perhaps something else entirely. Alara could not tell. But as the cold wind swept through the valley, she realized the true test was only beginning. The lights Alara had seen in the distance reached the valley just after sunrise. She stood near the ancient archway while the small group approached through the morning fog. There were only 7 of them. A blacksmith and his wife. An elderly healer. 2 brothers carrying packs filled with supplies. A widow traveling alone. And a quiet young man who rarely met anyone's eyes. Their arrival should have felt encouraging. Instead, Alara noticed something else. Every new person brought hope, but every new person also brought another mouth to feed. By the end of the week, 21 people lived inside the hidden sanctuary. The food stores were shrinking faster than they could replenish them. The first snow arrived 2 days later. Thin white flakes drifted across the valley and settled on the ancient stone pathways. Nobody said it aloud, but everyone understood what it meant. Winter had arrived. The following morning, Owen returned from a hunting expedition with empty hands. The disappointment on his face told the story before he spoke. Nothing. Several people exchanged worried looks. Miriam stared at the small pile of remaining supplies. At this rate, we have perhaps 3 weeks. The words settled heavily across the chamber. 3 weeks. The ancient kingdom suddenly felt much less magical. Alara spent the entire day helping organize rations, searching forgotten corridors, and exploring chambers that had remained sealed for centuries. She found old maps, broken furniture, dust-covered murals. She found everything except what they truly needed. Food. That evening, tension finally surfaced. Garrett stood near the fire while several others listened. We followed a voice because we wanted something better, he said. But wanting something does not make it real. Nobody interrupted him. We are running out of food. Winter is here. Maybe we should return to our old territories before it is too late. The words hit harder than Alara expected. A few people nodded. Not because they wanted to leave. Because they were afraid. Fear spread quickly when survival was uncertain. Alara understood that. She felt it herself every night. Yet before she could answer, another voice spoke from the shadows. And returned to what? It was the widow, a woman named Clara. She stepped closer to the fire. I lost my home 2 years ago. There is nothing waiting for me. Others quietly agreed. The chamber divided into uneasy groups. Some wanted to stay. Some wanted to leave. Nobody knew who was right. Later that night, after most people had gone to sleep, Alara walked alone through the ancient halls. The glowing crystals reflected across polished stone floors. The kingdom felt alive somehow. Waiting. Watching. She eventually reached the great chamber where the moon wolf rested upon its platform. Its silver eyes opened the moment she entered. They are losing faith, Alara admitted. The moon wolf studied her quietly. Some are. What if they are right? She asked. What if I brought them here for nothing? Silence lingered for several seconds. Then the guardian spoke. Do you know why kingdoms fail? Alara shook her head. Because leaders begin believing they must carry every burden alone. The words struck deeper than she expected. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed through the corridor behind her. Alara turned. The quiet young man who had arrived with the most recent group stood near the entrance. His name was Rowan. He looked nervous, almost guilty. I need to tell you something, he said. Alara immediately sensed something was wrong. Rowan lowered his eyes. When I left Iron Hollow, Someone paid me to watch for unusual things. The chamber grew still. Who? Alara asked. Rowan swallowed hard. A royal official. The revelation hit like cold water. Suddenly, several strange moments from the past week made sense. The questions Rowan asked. The places he wandered. The way he always seemed to be observing. Did you tell them about this place? Alara asked quietly. Rowan looked ashamed. Not yet. Not yet. The words echoed through the chamber. Outside, snow continued falling across the valley. Inside, Alara realized the challenge ahead was no longer just survival. Someone in the royal capital already knew enough to start looking. And if they found the hidden kingdom before it was ready, everything they had built could disappear before it truly began. Alara did not sleep that night. Snow drifted steadily beyond the mountain entrance while Rowan's confession echoed through her thoughts. Someone in the royal capital already knew enough to begin searching. The hidden sanctuary was no longer protected by secrecy alone. For the first time since discovering the ancient kingdom, she felt the fragile future they had built beginning to crack. By morning, word of Rowan's confession had spread through the settlement. Fear moved faster than reason. Small conversations stopped when Alara walked past. Worried glances followed her through the halls. Some people questioned whether they should leave before outsiders arrived. Others blamed Rowan entirely. The sense of unity that had carried them through the first difficult weeks seemed suddenly vulnerable. Miriam gathered several community members inside one of the restored chambers. Their voices remained respectful, but concern filled every sentence. If the capital finds us now, we are not ready, Owen said. We barely have enough food. Garrett nodded immediately. That is exactly what I have been saying. Alara listened quietly. She could not dismiss their concerns because she shared them. The ancient kingdom still felt more like a dream than a nation. Most of their buildings remained unfinished. Their supplies remained limited. Their future remained uncertain. Yet what troubled her most was not the possibility of discovery. It was the possibility of losing faith before they ever had a chance to succeed. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, inside the royal archives beneath the capital, Kalin Thornridge stood surrounded by forgotten records. Dust-covered shelves that had not been touched in generations. Ancient maps lay spread across a massive oak table. 3 weeks earlier, he might have ignored rumors of a hidden kingdom. Now he found himself spending every free hour searching for answers. An elderly archivist approached carrying a weathered leather journal. This was sealed nearly 200 years ago, she explained. Most people believed it was fiction. Kalin opened the journal carefully. Inside, he found drawings that immediately captured his attention. A crescent moon surrounding a wolf. Silver towers. Ancient pathways beneath the mountains. His pulse quickened. He turned another page. Then another. Finally, he found a passage that forced him to sit down. The words described the Moon Sovereigns, the first rulers of the Northern Territories, the rulers who existed before Alpha Kingdoms rose to power. The rulers' history had almost erased. Kalin read the passage twice. Then a third time. One sentence refused to leave his mind. The final heir shall return when the forgotten answer her call. He stared at the page for a long time. A memory surfaced. Alara standing alone in the judgment assembly. Alara refusing to lower her eyes. Alara asking why she was the only one being blamed. For the first time, genuine regret settled heavily in his chest. Back in the sanctuary, another challenge emerged. Before sunset, 3 families announced they were leaving. Nobody argued with them. Nobody tried to stop them. Yet watching them pack their belongings felt like losing a battle nobody had prepared for. As their lanterns disappeared into the snowy evening, the remaining settlers stood quietly near the entrance. The silence hurt more than any argument could have. Alara remained there long after everyone else returned inside. The cold wind moved through the valley, carrying away the final traces of the departing footsteps. For the first time since arriving at the sanctuary, she allowed herself to imagine the possibility that she had been wrong. Maybe Garrett had been right all along. Maybe hope was not enough. Maybe she had mistaken destiny for desperation. The thought followed her through the silent corridors as she walked deeper into the mountain. When she finally reached the great chamber, the moon wolf was already waiting. Its silver eyes reflected the crystal light overhead. Alara stopped several feet away and lowered her gaze. What if they chose the wrong person? She asked quietly. The guardian remained silent. The question echoed through the vast chamber. What if they need someone stronger? Her voice trembled slightly. Someone who knows how to build a kingdom. Several seconds passed before the moon wolf stepped forward. Do you know why they followed you? Alara slowly shook her head. Because you never pretended to be more than you are. Tears threatened to rise, but she forced them back. The guardian's voice softened. The proud seek power because they believe they deserve it. The worthy fear power because they understand its cost. The words settled deep inside her heart. They did not erase her doubts. They simply reminded her that courage was choosing to continue despite them. The next morning, another challenge arrived. The first snowstorm of winter swept through the valley. Supplies ran lower. Spirits grew heavier. Then, just as uncertainty threatened to consume the settlement entirely, a deep rumble echoed through the mountain. Everyone froze. The sound came again. Ancient. Powerful. Crystal lights flickered across the corridors. Hidden mechanisms awakened somewhere deep below the kingdom. Stone doors that had remained sealed for centuries slowly began opening. The entire mountain seemed to come alive. Settlers rushed into the halls, staring in amazement as forgotten chambers revealed themselves. Alara followed the glow deeper underground until she reached an enormous vault hidden beneath the sanctuary. Inside stood rows of preserved grain stores, ancient tools, and seeds protected by centuries of careful design. Enough supplies to sustain hundreds through winter. Gasps echoed throughout the chamber. Some cried openly. Others simply stood frozen in disbelief. The kingdom had not abandoned them after all. Yet as relief swept through the settlers, Alara noticed something else. The moon wolf stood farther away than usual. Its massive form seemed less solid than before, almost transparent. The guardian had spent its strength awakening the vault. And for the first time, Alara realized saving the kingdom might come with a cost she had never expected. The discovery of the hidden vault changed the mood of the sanctuary, but it did not erase the questions waiting beyond the mountains. The grain stores would carry them through winter. The ancient tools would help them build. The preserved seeds promised a future. Yet every celebration seemed quieter than it should have been. Alara knew why. The moon wolf was fading. Each day its silver form appeared slightly less solid. Each day its voice seemed to travel a greater distance before reaching her. The guardian never complained. It never spoke of weakness. But Alara saw the truth. The kingdom was surviving because the moon wolf continued sacrificing part of itself to awaken what had been lost. One evening she stood alone in the great chamber, staring at the ancient guardian. "How much longer can you keep doing this?" she asked softly. The moon wolf remained silent for several moments. Crystal light shimmered across its fading form. Long enough. Alara hated the answer because it sounded too much like goodbye. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Kalin Thornridge sat alone in the deepest chamber of the royal archives. Ancient books surrounded him. Maps covered entire tables. For days he had searched through forgotten records, chasing fragments of a history few people even remembered. Most accounts contradicted one another. Most had been altered by generations of rulers. Yet one detail appeared again and again. A name. Whitmore. Kalin froze as he read it for the third time. According to a manuscript nearly 300 years old, the final guardians of the moon's sovereigns had hidden themselves among ordinary packs. They abandoned titles, abandoned wealth, abandoned power, but they kept their bloodline alive. His eyes moved slowly across the page until he reached the final sentence. The heir shall bear silver eyes and the mark of the crescent wolf. The room suddenly felt smaller. Memories flooded back without permission. Alara standing beneath the moonlight. Alara refusing to lower her gaze during judgment. Alara asking a simple question that nobody answered. Why am I the only one standing here? Kalin closed his eyes. For the first time since becoming Alpha King, he felt ashamed of a decision he could not undo. Not because he had misjudged an Omega, because he had failed someone who stood alone while everyone else looked away. The realization followed him throughout the night. By sunrise, his choice was made. He summoned only a handful of trusted advisors. No soldiers, no army, no display of authority. "We leave for the northern mountains tomorrow," he announced. Shock spread across the room. One advisor immediately objected. "Your Majesty, if the rumors are true, this could be the beginning of a rival kingdom." Kalin looked toward the frost-covered windows. "Then I need to see it myself." Back in the sanctuary, another problem emerged. Rowan approached Alara near one of the restored workshops. He looked more nervous than she had ever seen him. There is something I should have told you earlier. Alara immediately felt a knot form in her stomach. Rowan hesitated. The official who paid me was not acting alone. She remained silent. Several people in the capital have been investigating strange reports for months. They know about the lights. They know people are traveling north. Rowan lowered his gaze. And they know the symbol has returned. The news spread quickly. Fear followed. Some settlers worried they would be discovered before they were ready. Others feared the capital would never allow them to exist peacefully. Conversations grew tense. Old doubts resurfaced. That evening, Alara gathered everyone inside the great chamber. Hundreds of faces turned toward her beneath the crystal-lit ceiling. She stood quietly for several seconds before speaking. I cannot promise what the outside world will do. The room remained silent. But I can promise that nobody here will face it alone. Miriam smiled first. Then Owen nodded. Slowly, confidence spread through the crowd once again. Not because the danger disappeared, because they trusted one another more than they feared uncertainty. Later that night, Alara returned to the Moon Wolf. The Guardian stood motionless atop its platform. They still believe in this place, she said. The Moon Wolf's silver eyes softened. No. Alara frowned. The Guardian looked toward the distant mountain walls. They believe in you. Before she could respond, every crystal in the chamber suddenly erupted with brilliant silver light. Ancient symbols blazed across the pillars. A powerful pulse rolled through the mountain. Somewhere far beyond the valley, hidden towers awakened for the first time in centuries. The Moon Wolf immediately lifted its head. Its expression changed. For the first time, Alara saw concern in the ancient Guardian's eyes. What is it? She asked. The Moon Wolf stared toward the northern horizon as though seeing beyond mountains, forests, and distance itself. When it finally spoke, its voice carried both warning and certainty. He knows who you are now. Alara felt her heartbeat quicken. The Guardian's gaze never left the horizon. And he is coming. By sunrise, the entire valley was awake. News of the Alpha King's arrival had spread through the sanctuary before dawn. Families gathered along stone terraces overlooking the mountain road. Craftsmen paused their work. Children climbed watchtowers built from restored ruins. No one knew whether the day would bring peace, conflict, or something in between. What everyone understood was that history was about to change. Alara stood near the ancient gateway where snow-covered pines lined the valley entrance. The cold morning air carried a strange stillness. Beside her, the Moon Wolf watched the horizon. Its silver form remained beautiful, but the fading was impossible to ignore now. Light shimmered through parts of its body like moonlight passing through mist. The Guardian had sacrificed much to restore the kingdom. Alara feared what the final cost might be. Hours later, movement appeared on the mountain road below. A small delegation emerged from the forest. No army followed behind them. No banners of war filled the sky. Only a handful of riders led by Kalin Thornridge. Murmurs spread through the gathered settlers. Many recognized him immediately. Others knew him only through stories. Alara remained calm as the delegation approached. The last time she had seen Kalin, she stood alone before an entire pack. Today, hundreds stood beside her. The difference mattered. When Kalin finally reached the gateway, he stopped several yards away and dismissed the remaining distance between them on foot. The gesture did not go unnoticed. Silence settled across the valley. For several long moments, neither spoke. Kalin looked beyond Alara toward the thriving settlement hidden among the mountains. He saw homes, workshops, families, gardens protected beneath winter coverings. He saw people helping one another without regard for rank. Nothing resembled the threat described by rumors in the capital. Finally, he looked at her. I came searching for answers, he said. Alara held his gaze. And did you find them? A faint sadness crossed his face. More than I wanted to. Before either could continue, another voice interrupted. Lord Mercer stepped forward from the delegation. The senior Alpha advisor had opposed the journey from the beginning. His expression carried open skepticism. He looked toward the settlement, then toward Alara. With respect, Your Majesty, this changes nothing. The atmosphere tightened immediately. Mercer continued. A hidden valley and old stories do not erase reality. His eyes settled on Alara. She is still the same rejected Omega who stood in judgment before her own pack. Several settlers stiffened. Others exchanged angry looks. Mercer raised his chin slightly. Legends do not create rulers. Luck does not create legitimacy. The words echoed across the valley. Then everything changed. The wind vanished. Snowflakes froze in midair for a single impossible moment before drifting gently downward again. Every crystal tower throughout the kingdom began glowing. Silver light poured across pathways hidden beneath mountainsides. Ancient symbols awakened along stone walls and distant ridges. Conversations died instantly. The entire valley fell silent. The moon wolf slowly stepped forward. For months, its power had appeared restrained, fragmented, incomplete. Now streams of silver light surged toward it from every corner of the kingdom. The fading edges disappeared. Its form grew brighter, stronger, more magnificent than anyone had imagined. Gasps echoed throughout the crowd. The ancient guardian had fully awakened. Its silver eyes swept across the valley. No fear touched the hearts of those present. Instead, a profound sense of recognition settled over them. The feeling of standing before something older than kingdoms, older than titles, older than memory itself. One by one, wolves throughout the valley lowered their heads. Not because they were commanded, not because they were afraid, because every instinct they possessed recognized the authority of the ancient bloodline standing beside the guardian. Lord Mercer fell silent. Around him, alphas, betas, travelers, settlers, and advisors bowed their heads in quiet respect. Alara remained standing beside the moon wolf. Silver light surrounded her. The crescent mark upon her shoulder glowed faintly beneath the fabric of her cloak. Across the valley, hundreds watched with tears filling their eyes. The woman once dismissed as unworthy had become the living proof that worth could never be measured by status. Only one person remained standing. Kalin Thornridge. The Alpha King stared at Alara for several long seconds. Memories crossed his face one after another. The judgment square. The whispers. The accusations. The moment she had asked a question nobody answered. His voice finally broke the silence. That night, you asked why you were the only one standing there alone. The valley remained completely still. Alara felt her breath catch. Kalin lowered his gaze briefly. I have thought about that question every day since you left. Emotion tightened his expression, and I finally understand the answer. He looked back at her. You should never have been standing there alone. Tears appeared in the eyes of many listening. Kalin took another step forward. I thought I was judging an omega. His voice remained steady despite the regret beneath it. I did not realize I was standing before a queen. Then, before every person present, the Alpha King lowered his head in acknowledgement. Not surrender, not defeat, respect freely given. A wave of emotion moved through the crowd. Some openly wept. Others smiled through tears. The moment felt larger than either kingdom, larger than either throne. It felt like justice finally arriving after taking the longest road possible. Alara looked across the valley. She saw Miriam, Owen, Rowan, Clara, the families who stayed when leaving would have been easier. The people who chose hope when certainty did not exist. They were the reason the kingdom survived. They were the reason it deserved a future. She stepped forward and raised her voice. No one here will ever be measured by rank. The crystal towers blazed brighter. No one here will ever be told they matter less because of who they are. Cheers erupted across the valley. Silver light filled the sky above the mountains. The moon wolf lifted its head toward the heavens one final time. Its form shone brighter than ever before. And as the celebration echoed through the kingdom, Alara realized the greatest throne had never been built from power. It had been built from every person who refused to stop believing in their own worth when the world told them not to.